Callum Johnson flew out the corner like a bat out of hell at the opening bell and jumped right on Artur Beterbiev. Beterbiev, I think, might have been a bit surprised by how aggressive Callum Johnson was and willing to engage. I think Beterbiev is used to fighters being intimidated by his power, or at least very, very respectful, whereas Johnson was all over him like white on rice. And Beterbiev fell back into, I guess, a lot of his amateur training and experience and started popping a jab, utilizing his back foot game. And it was clear that he was the far superior technician in there. His jab was very hard and thudding, very accurate, but he was getting caught in the first round. Again, I think he was surprised by the ferocity of Johnson's attack. He got caught with his head up too high a few times in the first round, but towards the end of the round, he did drop Callum Johnson quite heavily. And at that point, it looked like the writing was on the wall. It looked like a kamikaze mission, actually, and I'll get onto the tactics a little later on in the video, but that's what I thought. I was like, wow, kamikaze mission, are you sure this is wise? And as I say, he got dropped at the end of the first round, managed to make it through, got to the second round, and that's where we had the big shock, because Callum Johnson came out with the same tactics in the second round. He was no less aggressive, put it right on Artur Beterbiev, and it very nearly paid off. A crashing left hook collided into Beterbiev's chin, and down Artur Beterbiev went rather heavily. Now, he did get up relatively quickly, but he was in serious trouble. His legs were all over the place. His eyes were in separate orbit, and it looked for a moment as though the impossible, the unthinkable was about to happen, and Callum Johnson was about to relieve Artur Beterbiev of his IBF light heavyweight title. But Beterbiev was able to gather himself, see out the round, then he came out for the third and proceeded to box, busting Callum Johnson up with a jab. Johnson sustained quite a bit of facial damage by this point. The boxing continued, and Beterbiev was starting to get into a groove, even though Callum Johnson was still coming at him with a ferocious assault. Beterbiev's boxing was starting to take over. And then finally, in the fourth round, when Callum Johnson had Beterbiev backed up against the ropes, Beterbiev landed a counter right hand which caught Callum Johnson high on the head, kind of almost around the temple area just above, maybe a little bit behind the ear. Down went Callum Johnson, and he was unable to beat the count. His equilibrium was completely thrown off. He tried to get up, but this is one of those instances where a guy was on the floor trying to get up, and he was genuinely trying to get up. He wasn't trying to make it look as though he was trying to get up and actually quitting. No, he was genuinely trying to get up, but his balance was totally scrambled by the punch that he got hit with. And he was counted out at 2 minutes 36 of the fourth round. And the scary thing about that knockout punch was that Beterbiev threw it with his back to the ropes, essentially on his back foot. As I've said many times, there are not many fighters out there who can generate knockout power on the back foot. Artur Beterbiev, we now know, is one who can. That's scary. But having said that, there were plenty of flaws in Beterbiev's performance. Some people have even gone as far as calling him chinny because of the fact that he got dropped. He was also dropped earlier on in his career in this fight here against Jeff Page Jr. I remember watching that fight. Now, I would have to go back and see it again, but I remember thinking at the time when he got dropped by Jeff Page Jr. that it was a balance shot. It was a shot where he was off balance to the point that you could have punched him in the chest and he would have gone down. So I didn't really read too much into this. I just felt like it was a balance shot and he wasn't really hurt or stunned or anything. It was just purely force against an off-balance, sufficient force against an off-balance Beterbiev to nudge him to the canvas, basically. That was my perception of it at the time. Maybe if I go back and watch it again, I'll see it in a different light. I'm not sure, but that's what I remember of it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the first real knockdown that Beterbiev ever suffered in his career. I know technically you have to count a knockdown, even if the guy was just off balance and went down for that reason after getting hit with an innocuous punch. I understand you have to call it a knockdown, but if we're assessing Beterbiev's chin, this Callum Johnson knockdown was the first time he's really had his chin tested. And I'm not going to say that he's chinny because I haven't seen enough evidence for that yet. Being knocked down don't mean you're chinny, necessarily. It was a great shot from Callum Johnson. A big left hook. Beterbiev did go down quite heavily, but he recovered quite quick. So I'm not going to call him chinny just yet. I'm just going to say it was a great shot by Callum Johnson, who is somewhat of a puncher, might not have done it at heavyweight, but he was fighting with a hell of a lot of energy, Callum Johnson. And his weight was on his front foot when he threw the left hook. So it probably had a decent amount of mustard on it when it landed on Beterbiev's chin. You know, it might have hurt a lot of light heavyweights out there. So, yeah. As far as Callum Johnson's tactics and his performance, Callum Johnson, for those of you who don't know, lost his father fairly recently, and he was very close to his father. And I do wonder whether he would have fought in such a kamikaze fashion if his dad was still alive. Maybe he would have done. Maybe that's just him. Maybe that's the strategy that him and Joe Gallagher worked out. A necessary gamble, perhaps. But at the time, I was thinking, this is very reckless the way he's fighting. And is he just fighting purely off emotion because of the death of his dad? We'll never know. But if it was a tactic of Callum Johnson and Joe Gallagher to come out so aggressively, I guess they were gambling on Beterbiev not being mentally prepared for this kind of fight. Beterbiev's always in great physical condition, we know that, but mentally, was he prepared to have a guy come at him and put it on him? And would he crumble in such a situation? Particularly if he got caught with a few big shots and dropped. I suspect that if this was the tactic of Johnson and Gallagher to be aggressive like this, that was probably the logic behind it. To catch him off guard, he's a big puncher, he's not used to somebody putting it on him. So let's just go all out. And also, they probably thought to themselves that they couldn't outbox, that Johnson couldn't outbox Beterbiev. So why wait on the outside and box his way into a fight? Because he'll probably just get broken down methodically if he tries to fight that way. That's what I imagine Johnson and Gallagher were thinking. We'll just get broken down methodically and we won't really have much success. But if we jump right on him at the opening bell, surprise him, we might be able to catch him with something. And to be honest with you, we'll never know if Johnson would have done any better if he'd boxed his way into a fight and tried to be a bit smart about it. We'll never know if he would have done better doing it that way. But I suspect that he wouldn't have done better. He might have gone more rounds, but I suspect that he wouldn't have had the success. He wouldn't have scored the knockdown. Because, as I just explained, Beterbiev is the far superior technical fighter. He's better at long range. His punches are more cultured. And yeah, I think if Johnson had tried to box his way into the fight, it would have been a more comfortable night's work for Artur Beterbiev. But the kamikaze tactics that Johnson actually did use very nearly caused an upset. So I applaud Callum Johnson for going for it. Fought with a lot of emotion, a lot of passion, and he tried his absolute best. He's going to look back at that fight and say, well, I couldn't have done any. Well, actually, no, he probably will. He'll probably think he could have done more. That's how boxers usually are. But from a fan perspective, as far as I'm concerned, he couldn't have done any more. He tried his best. He did his thing. He's got nothing to be ashamed of. He can hold his head high. And he very nearly got the win. And Callum Johnson will get more big fights off the back of that. Yeah, the fact that he's the first guy to drop well, not the first guy to drop him, but the first guy to have him in serious trouble. And the first guy to attack him like that. Callum Johnson will get a lot of props and he'll get more big fights, I think, more offers of big fights off the back of that. Now, it won't be everybody who's giving him a title shot or whatever, but there will be certain fighters. I think somebody like Artur Beterbiev and his people, they might look at that and say, you know what, yeah, we like what we saw from Callum Johnson. Let's give the guy a shot, because Artur Beterbiev comes across to me as a very confident man. And he might be thinking, okay, I'm ready for Johnson's crude attack. I'll fight him and I'll do a better job than Beterbiev. I won't get dropped. And that will help set up a unification potentially. So yeah, showing that kind of heart in a fight, in a losing effort, can get you respect, and the respect can get you more paydays. If Callum Johnson had gone out there and tried to box and got methodically broken down and had no real success, nobody would be talking about this fight. Let's be real. But the fact that he dropped Beterbiev and made a real war of it, people are talking about it. So, yeah. Hats off to Callum Johnson, but also hats off to Artur Beterbiev dealing with the situation as professionally as he did. Although Beterbiev was quite relieved after the fight. He got down on the mat and started praying, thanking God that he managed to secure the victory, because I think he was a bit surprised. I think he was taken aback and a bit shocked by how aggressively he was being attacked. But he handled it well, and the better fighter won at the end of the day. The fighter who was more polished, more seasoned, as an amateur at least, and far more skilled was Beterbiev, and he won the fight. So hats off to him too. Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you felt about this fight. It was a really good fight, by the way, for 4 rounds. Action-packed. 3 knockdowns. So, yeah, good fight to watch. Let me know what you felt about it. And how do you think Artur Beterbiev would do against the other champions? You got people like Artur Beterbiev out there. Adonis Stevenson. You've also got Alida Alvarez. And you got contenders like Alexander Vodcek and several others out there. So let me know how you think Beterbiev would do against those guys, having seen that he is now fallible, having seen that he is vulnerable to a good left hook or even a good right hand. All right, I'm talking about his punch resistance here. He can be got to. He's not the heavyweight version of Golovkin in terms of his punch resistance. So yeah, let me know how you feel, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.